So once again, I'd like to read an excerpt from In the Heart of the Temple by Joan Chittister. The topic of the day is simplicity. Finally, simplicity of life manifests itself in perfect serenity. The simple person pays close attention to the agitations that eat at the heart. It is our agitations that tell us where life has gone astray for us, has become unbearably complex and eternally confused. If we lack simplicity, if we fret at every delay, become miserable at every change of plans, become miffed at every imagined slight, become irritated at every lapse of deference, become despondent over every lack of gadget, then God has been replaced in us by a God of our own making. Then the simple life, the sanctity of the present moment, the contemplation of the divine in the mundane, the purity of heart that centers us on the eternal, that is in the now, disappears into oblivion. Then simplicity of heart becomes counterfeit. Chop all the wood you want, give away all the clothes you own, romanticize the praises of the pioneer life, but simplicity has flown you by. There is simply no simplicity in a heart full of agitation, in a soul too distracted by a plethora of projects and products to recognize the one who is among us yet, but invisible in chaos.
Today's reading is from Mark 7, verses 1 through 8. The Pharisees and some of the religious scholars who had come from Jerusalem gathered around Jesus. They had noticed that some of the disciples were eating with unclean hands, that is, without ritually washing them. For the Pharisees and Jewish people in general followed the tradition of their ancestors and never eat without washing their arms as far as the elbow. Moreover, they never eat anything from the market without first sprinkling it. There are many other traditions which have been handed down to them, such as washing of cups and pots and dishes. So these Pharisees and religious scholars asked Jesus, "Why do your disciples not respect the tradition of our ancestors, but eat their food with unclean hands?" Jesus answered, "How accurately Isaiah prophesied about you hypocrites when he wrote, 'These people honor me with their lips, while their hearts are far from me. The worship they offer me is worthless. The doctrines they teach are only human precepts. You disregard God's commandments and cling to human traditions.'"
Would you pray with me? God of light, shine your light upon us and illumine our hearts and our souls, that we might see more clearly, know you more dearly, that we might be touched and changed, that we might live life more fully, more wholly, more rooted in you. May the words of my mouth, the meditations of all of our hearts, be filled with your simplicity, your love, and your wisdom. Amen. So if you were to live a day or a couple of hours simply, what would that look like? What would you do? What are you snickering about, Dean? Eat when you're hungry. Okay, what else? What does it look like?
No computers.
No computers.
No TV.
No TV. Where would you be?
Playing.
No phone.
Playing.
Playing.
Read and drink coffee.
Something and cream it.
Read
Read and drink coffee. Preferably next to the fireplace in a storm, right? What else? What does a day of simplicity look like? Sitting on a warm beach with Carlos the pool boy. and some frozen beverage option. What else? No work. All of those are, and what are the feelings that come up if you're living a day simply? What does it feel like? Peaceful, relaxing.
I don't know what that's like.
You don't know what that's like, I'm sorry. What was somebody said something?
Smiling,
Smiling? Okay.
no stress.
No stress. No worries. No worry, man. Hakuna Matata. All of those good things. It sounds wonderful, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Idyllic. All of these wonderful things. Life could be simple.
let's go.
But I'm pretty sure it's a fair statement to say that life is complex. And if you doubt that, let me give you 3 examples. Cell phones, television remotes, and health insurance. How are you going to have simplicity when you've got those 3 things? And if those things weren't bad enough, all you have to do is throw in there, relationships and jobs and tragedies and illness and feelings and pets and homes and kids and aging parents and all of those other things that make life complex and difficult. And pretty soon, instead of only 2 strands of tangled up Christmas lights, you have like an entire box that you have to untangle every day. Life is complex. I chose the scripture that I did for today because it spoke to me of how the Jews had made their religion so complex and so complicated. 613 laws to follow if you were going to be blessed by God, if you were going to be righteous and holy and the perfect follower of the divine. And we just get like 2 or 3 of them in this passage. You had to wash your hands and forearms before you ate, sprinkle the food. Add to that, the food had to be prepared the right way in the first place, had to be kosher, and then it has to be cleaned up the right way, and certain dishes had to be kept away from other dishes, and certain foods have to be kept away from other foods, and it gets really complicated and complex. And then the Pharisee comes up to Jesus and says, "You're supposed to be a good, holy person. How come your disciples aren't washing their hands before they eat?" And Jesus looks at him and says, "Really? Seriously? This is what you're going to nitpick about? You think God is keeping track of whether they're washing their hands before they eat? I'm pretty sure God's more concerned about what's in their hearts than whether they've got dirty hands." Purity of heart. Having God within our hearts. Joan Chittister goes there too. She says, life is crazy. But when we get caught up in all of the craziness, the interruptions, the disappointments, the inconveniences, the distractions, when we allow those to throw us off kilter, is when we get, torn up and tossed around in the chaos that is life. And we can't even have time to know the sanctity of the moment, the sanctity of the divine in this place now, to feel the presence of the Lord like Tony's going to sing about in just a couple minutes. We lose all of that if we don't have a simplicity of heart in the midst of all that craziness. Well, it sounds all well and good, but how do you get there? How do we foster that simplicity of heart? She gives us four things. Okay, you're all paying attention, right? Because I'm going to quiz you all at the end. Because that's the only way you pay attention. Okay, so these are the 4, and then I'm going to flesh them out. Honesty, being unencumbered, opening to a consciousness deeper than us, bigger than us, and serenity. So honesty. Honesty is not just about, I'm not going to lie to you. Honesty is about being true to who you are. It's about being authentically you with integrity all the time, which means you actually have to be paying attention to yourself to know if you're living with integrity and honesty and authenticity. But it's impossible to have a simplicity of heart if you're dealing with the complexity of trying to be what everybody else wants you to be, of trying to please everybody else, of putting on a mask so people only see what you want them to see and, heaven forbid, see the things that you're afraid for them to see inside. You can't live a heart with a simple heart if you have the complexity of always wanting what you want and when you want and how you want it. And so to understand ourselves a little better and where all of that stuff comes from. Why do we respond the way we respond? Why do we live the way we live, behave the way we behave? And who are we truly underneath all of that? So the first one was? Good. Good so far. The second one is being unencumbered. Being unencumbered. The Arabs have a proverb that says, we only own what cannot be lost in a shipwreck. We only own what cannot be lost in a shipwreck. All of those things that we want, that we desire, that we need, if we really think about it, they're all impermanent, right? They're not going to last. Anybody who has ever, how many of you have cleaned out somebody's house after they've passed away, or they moved into a nursing home, or you've moved yourself? Okay, I'll grant you that one. If you've ever had to clean out after somebody, you know that they didn't get to take the stuff with them. And at some point in time, it didn't matter at all anymore. And yet we keep accumulating, often without getting rid of other things. You know, we buy more clothes without getting rid of the old ones. We buy a new broom, but we don't toss out the old broom. We buy new stuff. But we just go, well, maybe I'll need the old one someday, so I'll keep that too. How many of you have an old stereo system sitting in your basement that is no longer worthy of anything, or an old television, or something? You know, you have this stuff laying around. And yet, at the end of the day, it's not the things that are the problem. Because things are really neutral. They don't get to cause our problems. The issue is not being able to let go, of becoming attached and not being able to release. And so, to be unencumbered, are you listening to me, Jim? Unencumbered. Remember that house you got rid of? Yeah, okay. Unencumbered means being able to not just take in, but to let go.
I figured this was for me.
Yeah, but you're like playing with the form, which means you're avoiding. It's avoidance. I understand this, so I love you. Being able to not just take in, but to let go. Being unencumbered. The third one is opening to a consciousness greater than us, which means to be aware of the divine in and around and through us, and to root ourselves in the ground of our being, so that we act out of love and compassion and patience and gentleness and kindness and understanding in all situations. Opening to a consciousness greater than ourselves. And the last one. So you got serenity down, all right. Well, that's good. What was number 2? Unencumbered, good, okay. Just checking. Serenity. It means being able to deal with the craziness of life from a place that is centered and calm. Do you remember being a kid and going to the park where they have those little merry-go-rounds? Where You could sit in the center of the merry-go-round, and you could sit there, cross your legs, and somebody else would spin you as fast as they could, and you were fine. But what happened when you started to like move toward the outside? You're hanging on for dear life. And if the person was fast enough, by the end, you're hanging on like this, right? And you're lucky if you get sucked under the merry-go-round. So this is the image that came to mind when I'm thinking about serenity in the midst of life's chaos. If we don't sit in the center of that merry-go-round, life is going to take us and fling us around at will. And so it's trying to be in that place when we deal with the drama and the tragedies and the frustrations and the aggravations. Okay, so what were the four things? The first one was honesty. The second one was the third one was open to a greater consciousness, and the last one was good. So she suggests we try and work on those things to develop a simplicity of heart to help us deal with the Christmas lights in our lives. Mark Nepo has a slightly different image that I want to share with you, and I have to read it because he just says it so well. I've been listening way inside where the universe rushes through me like wind through a hole in an old door in a hut near the edge of a cliff. I've been going there and listening on the inner edge of everything. There I've heard two irrevocable truths. The truth of life, the very fact of it, how it comes out of nowhere like a strong breeze to lift our faces, how it goes on its way. And the truth of how life, like a storm, can rough up our hearts. How we have no choice but to feel that wind move through us and around us. Trying to give words to this is difficult, but the first truth can be offered as the truth of things as they are. And the second as the experience of being human. So we live in this challenging place where we have the truth of life as it is, which is sort of the center of the merry-go-round. The place where we're grounded and connected to the divine and to our authentic selves, where we're okay to let go and we're unencumbered, where we have a simplicity of heart through everything, the truth of things as they are. And then we have the experience of life, which are the storms, big and small, that hit us all the time. He suggests that instead of, when those storms come up, instead of running away from them or hiding from them, because the storm's going to do the damage whether you're standing on the front porch or hiding in the basement, that when that storm comes, we attempt to create a container where we can hold the truth of things as they are, the simplicity of heart, the connection to the divine, with the storms of life, the complexity of life. That we hold them all together in one container so that our simplicity of heart works patiently on the knotted Christmas lights until our simplicity of heart with patience and gentleness and understanding and kindness has sorted through those lights until they're one long strand that can be used and utilized. And that seems to make a whole lot of sense to me. That we find the space to hold them together until those complexities become simple. So, your last test. The first one was honesty. Second, the third one, openness to the consciousness. And the last one, serenity. I encourage you to pay attention to those things in your lives. as I will pay attention in my life to try and spend more time in the middle of that merry-go-round than hanging off the edge. Amen.